Well, here we are again, everybody. Welcome back to the Square at the Circle music channel. We're talking about circles and squares tonight. That's right, just like we always do. Gonna bring out some really great stuff tonight. Gonna talk about jazz. I know a lot of you have probably been waiting for this. Probably gonna disappoint though. I'm not a big classic jazz head. I don't collect a lot of unique, cool jazz stuff like a lot of people do. I'm not a staunch, hard-nosed appreciator of jazz like a lot of people are. Now don't get me wrong, I do love jazz and I do appreciate jazz. And I actually kind of began my formative years as an actual musician playing jazz. But I have a little bit, I wouldn't say a different taste than some people. I just have kind of a specific kind of like really fine-tuned taste when it comes to my jazz and what I appreciate and love about jazz. And tonight we're going to talk about progressive jazz because that's really what I like. I kind of, I dabbled. We're talking early 90s, mid 90s when I started playing in public school, and I kind of cut my teeth, so to speak, in the jazz world on kind of like basically fusion jazz. A lot of the stuff we were doing and a lot of stuff that we loved to play was, fused with Latin, fused with funk, fused with rock and roll. And a lot of stuff I liked to listen to when I was a kid was stuff that was fused with rock and roll primarily. So that's where my introduction to jazz came from. I never really delved much into the classic jazz world, and I know there's a lot of people who are, aficionados and people who collect records and stuff. That's, that's the golden age right there. And so I get a lot of hate from folks who are collectors and people who are appreciators that just don't really understand or see why I don't listen to a lot of classic jazz, bebop and big band and yada yada. It's just never really fueled my fire. So like I said, I'm more of a progressive jazz guy. So tonight we're going to talk about progressive jazz, prog jazz. And I pulled out some stuff, maybe like, I don't think I got quite 10 out. I think I just pulled out some of the stuff that was kind of just right in front of my face. And going to bring it out and talk about it a little bit. So I'll just go ahead and get right to it. First on the list, a band I'm sure a lot of you folks were expecting to have this pop up because everyone knows my penchant for being a huge progressive rock fan. And in my opinion, these guys really come from a place of weren't necessarily fueling their progressive fire by way of the symphonic end of everything. They were more of the jazz inspired group. So of course I'm talking about the Canterbury Greats, of course King Crimson. But this one I brought out specifically because this is kind of a later faction of them, and I feel this kind of just gets kind of like picked over a lot of times by a lot of people for some reason. I don't really quite understand. It's just not that like 70s, prog rock era that people really romanticize and love about King Crimson. This is more, this is the 80s, and this is more of kind of like, we're talking new wave, we're talking some kind of, a new stamp put on this band that a lot of people didn't necessarily, if they're from that era, they maybe didn't latch on to. I'm sure a lot of people from that era like really, really love it. I know I do. I'm not from the late 70s, early 80s per se. I mean, I was just a very, very young child, but this is kind of more the style of King Crimson that I was introduced to when I discovered King Crimson in the mid 90s. And so it's that Adrian Belew style and influence that really a lot of people just kind of, immediately kind of tuned out for some reason, because it just didn't have the John Wetton, and didn't have the that kind of style that they really loved from the 70s. So, but this one, 1981, Discipline by King Crimson, I call it a jazz fusion progressive jazz album, because that's really what it is. Adrian Belew, insane, amazing guitarist, songwriter, really did a lot of justice to the band, in my opinion. Brought a lot of new ideas, new concepts. We're talking stuff, like I said, is kind of fueled by the the punk stuff that was happening in the late 70s, and a lot of just kind of really cool noodly fusion jazz shit. He was bringing a lot of new odd tempos that they always delved in the avant, and delved into like odd meter and cool stuff. But this one, they really like jumped into the deep end, and it was apparent that Robert Fripp had really been spending a decade, really. I mean, the album's called Discipline, and so you could tell he'd been spending a lot of time just really hammering over stuff in his head and technicalities, and just like it's truly a masterwork, this album. And yeah, in my opinion, just has a lot more of kind of the really like fusion progressive jazz elements to it. It's super cool. A lot of really, like I said, a lot of really intricate time signature stuff, noodly guitar work between. I think this is probably the first time that Robert Fripp allowed a second guitar player into the King Crimson fold. So 2 guitar players, was a lot of cool, intricate, neat stuff in here. So for all you guitar jazz guys, and people who are percussive oriented players, drummers and bass players, and holy shit, I think Tony Levin plays bass on this. This wasn't Tony Levin's first with the band, I don't believe, but yeah, just incredible shit. Like I said, it fused with a lot of stuff that was going on with the no wave scene and punk scene. You hear a lot of inspiration, obviously, by bands like Talking Heads on here, particularly like the Elephant Talk songs, the opening track on the album. But just frame by frame, just beautiful vocal work, between Adrian Belew and whoever else is singing backup vocals throughout the album. But yeah. The Indiscipline track at the end of the A side, and then the Discipline track to finish out the album at the end of the B side. It's just dude, fucking incredible album. This album gets mowed over far too often, and this truly is a masterwork by this band. So yeah, anyone that's a King Crimson fan that doesn't tout this in their collection, you're not a real fan. Everybody that's into fusion jazz, get you some King Crimson. Discipline. All right, moving along this evening. Thanks again for joining me. This is one that I've brought it out before. I'll probably bring it out again. It's a classic. It's a monster of a classic. I think I brought this out and talked about it on some of my favorite experimental albums. Definitely can be classified as that. And this is, in my opinion, an experimental masterpiece of progressive jazz music. 1969, Hot Rats by Frank Zappa. I mean, I don't really need to explain this to many people. Any of you cool kids who don't have or haven't listened to this album, you're not as cool as you think you are. So get out there and get it. And yeah, this album speaks for itself. I don't believe it was Frank Zappa's first album, was it? But 1969, so definitely early career, really kind of a breakout, monumental piece of work by him, opening it up with, the so incredibly popular track, Peaches and Regalia, is probably most notable work of all time, but really catchy, amazing tune, incredible guitar work. All the rest of the players in the band, they all play together so well on this album. He was notorious for kind of switching up members almost every single album he did, and so it was tough. If you wanted to remain as part of Frank Zappa's band, you really you had to work really hard. From what I've gathered and read about and seen throughout history of the people he lets into his little members only club, like you have to be not only an outstanding, performer back in the day, but you had to keep your nose clean. He was that type of guy. He took it very, very seriously. He took his performance art very, very seriously. And anyone that knows anything about Frank Zappa understands that he's, not solely a businessman, but he took the business very seriously, and treated it like it was something to be respected and to be taken seriously. So we all honor and respect and love Frank Zappa, God rest his soul. And this album, Hot Rats, just a piece of absolute mastery, progressive jazz mastery. So yeah, this definitely had to be on my list, understandably so. Okay, moving along, this is a group that I'm not sure exactly how and when and where I came across this. It's been in my collection now for like a couple of decades. I stumbled upon it like in the late 90s, early 2000s. I think it was, some dude that I played in the University of Oregon drumline way back in the late 90s, in the early aughts, and there was a guy who was part of the jazz ensemble. He played in like this, it wasn't a jazz ensemble, but he was in the percussion program there, and he played like in some group ensemble, and just was really into a lot of those like kind of fusion, really awesome fusion funk groups, Soul Coughing, and just that really cool like fusion jazz shit that I was just kind of like opening my brain to in the 90s, in the late 90s, especially when I got into college. This was one of those groups. I think he introduced me to these guys, but these guys, man, way too cool. I don't know where they're from. I think they're from somewhere in the East, probably New York, but yeah, this is a group called Big Lazy. I think kind of a one and done type of band. I think they maybe just a group of dudes that just really wanted to cut a record, and I don't know if they kept playing, more of kind of just like an indie, regional type of group. Never really went too far out into the world and did much, but this is, an indie hit that somehow, reached me all the way here in small town Oregon. So, but yeah, eponymous album, band called Big Lazy. Really cool, subtle, soft, kind of Americana. I don't want to say soft. They're really intense, but they're, as far as like kind of, volume-wise, they don't really come much above just kind of like a mezzo forte kind of level. A guy plays double bass, big old stand-up double bass, killer guitar, and drum player, but drums, a lot of times we're talking kind of mostly soft brushwork, but really just kind of like dark mystique to these guys, all instrumental of course. Just, like I said, real dark mystique to them. The bass player does the work. He's really kind of like the centerpiece, in my opinion, the centerpiece of the trio, and just really kind of does a lot of the voicing in the band. You know what I mean? As far as when I say the voicing, just kind of like, just is the real like solid centerpiece, the real solid presence in the group, and it has just kind of that real dark mystique to it. It's hard to explain. I don't know if you know what I mean, just kind of by like, trio jazz, yeah, kind of subtle, cool jazz, stuff you'd hear just kind of in a small, kind of, punk bar kind of stuff. It's hard to explain. Yeah, but everyone, check these guys out. I don't know what more I can say about it. There's, like I said, kind of an unknown underground kind of band that just kind of had a hit. This was like, I believe 1999 is when this came out, and just kind of came and went, and they never got any real notoriety. So everyone check this out, real good. Big Lazy. Title track, or no, it's not the title track to the album. It's the first track on the album is called Skinless, Boneless. So get on your music player, whatever you got. Check out the whole album, obviously, but just that song, you'll know what I'm talking about. The first one, Skinless, Boneless, and the second track is called Elephant Walk. Equally as cool. But yeah, the last track on the album also really fucking good. Ash Wednesday, it's called. Yeah, the whole album. Just listen to the whole album. Fan-fucking-tastic. Okay, going into kind of a different realm of the kind of progressive jazz arena. That one, you know, when I say progressive jazz, it feels that way to me because it doesn't have a lot of those kind of like, you know, trademarks of like classic jazz as far as being like, you know, bebop or being, you know, big band or just anything like that. They kind of just have their kind of own kind of like, it's still kind of old world, but has more of kind of just like kind of a neo kind of, I said kind of punkish, but like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like kind of steampunk, like, I don't know. It felt like something different to me. It didn't feel like kind of like your classic jazz trio. It just kind of like has a very, very unique progressive stamp to it. This one also is kind of the same way in my opinion. Comes from different era. This is like early to mid 80s. This is a very, very famous jazz trumpeter, composer, film music composer. I've talked about him before. He's probably my favorite film music composer still. Was playing in jazz groups all throughout the 70s and early 80s as a trumpeter and multi-instrumentalist, but primarily a trumpeter. And started doing, you know, trying his hand at film compositions in the mid 80s, and took to it like a duck to water or a fish to whatever. You know what I'm trying to say. This is the man, Mark Isham. Plays a very subtle, beautiful type of kind of, you know, what could be considered soft jazz or, you know, easy jazz or easy listening or new jazz, new wave jazz, new age jazz, whatever you want to call it, for that fantastic label Wyndham Hill Records I talk about a lot. But still so different and unique. You could tell that he was really taking off to greater heights and really taking off to a place that was more based in the realm of composition and really looking at things in a really grand scope. This was an album that he put out, I believe, in like 83, maybe 84. It's called Vapor Drawings. Yeah, just, you don't hear jazz music like this. Like I said, he was kind of like shooting for greater things, and like there's still so many great elements of, you know, easy jazz and stuff, but then you go into just these really like cinematic, really awesome moments where it's just so, you know, sonically descriptive and so just kind of like, it's hard to really put to words, but yeah, I mean, the title of the album is called Vapor Drawings, and you know, that kind of really sums it up in a really great way. Just that title, just kind of like, I don't know, the art's really beautiful on the cover, and I just get nothing but good feels from this album, and it's just unlike any other, you know, jazz album, or he's unlike any other jazz artist I've ever really come across. You can tell by the way he plays trumpet that he's, you know, hugely inspired by the greats, you know, Louis Armstrong and Miles Davis and, you know, things like that, players like that, I mean, but, you know, really took to the new age, you know, new age sound that was happening throughout the mid 70s and all the way up into the early 80s with, you know, synthesizer sounds and things like that, and he really just kind of took all that and just smashed it all into this really cool, multifaceted, you know, multi-genre type of jazz music. And yeah, I just love it dearly. So everyone should really give this guy a shot. He's just fucking phenomenal. And look at some of the stuff he's credited for. You'll kind of be blown away when you see the listing of film music that he has composed in the last 20 years, you'll really be taken aback. He's won Oscars, or at least he's been nominated. I know he's been nominated, but he's probably come close to winning Oscars for his music, and so yeah, really fantastic musician, Mark Isham. Okay, another one of those groups that I've talked about a lot, I bring up a lot, because I love the shit out of them. And I'll try to make this one of the last times I talk about these guys, but I just want everyone to know about them, because they're so fucking great. Talking about Pape. Yes, of course, again, Pape. From Denmark, they are a trio of progressive jazz rock musicians. They play some really, really insanely fucking cool instrumental progressive jazz in the way of psychedelia, sometimes heavy psych rock, acid rock, acid jazz, stoner jazz, stoner rock. Yeah, it's stoner jazz. It's really, really fucking great. You can really get a sense that they were all very accomplished, studied musicians. They understand the subtleties, they understand the clockwork, and they understand how things are supposed to fit in place, piece by piece by piece. But then they take that and they throw it all against the wall and smash it into 1,000 pieces and they just take it into another fucking dimension sometimes. It's so great. It's so great. Everyone that loves psychedelic jazz rock, progressive jazz, you'll love the shit out of this. I guarantee it. Excellent recording quality, the style, this record label that puts this stuff out, El Paraíso, top-notch, legit fucking company out of Denmark, Copenhagen. Buy everything that they're putting out. Go to their website, just click on all of it and just buy all of it. They're just awesome, just fantastic. So yeah, but specifically this band, I believe they just released a new album just in the last month or two. It's a live sessions album of all like jam session stuff that they just were like, sit down, smoke a bowl, hit record. The album's just called Jams. I haven't actually listened to it yet, so I'm kind of like just selling it for them here. I'm sure it's just phenomenal. I have 4 out of their 6 LP main releases, like major releases. So their first album I think it's just self-titled, and then after their first album they put out one called Stundum. So that would have been their second LP. So their first and their second, Stundum, I actually don't have those, but I have 3, 4, 5, 6, Alive at Roadburn, and then they just came out with this new one called Jams. So yeah, I'm obviously a really big fan, but they have tons and tons of material. Is my point. I'm not trying to brag about their albums that I have. I'm just saying they have tons and tons of material. I just recently noted too on the El Paraíso website they re-released a couple of really famous ones. I think the Stundum and maybe this one as well. I think they just did another repressing just recently, so you can get them for a moderate price. You're still gonna have to order it from them from Denmark, so it's still gonna cost you, in the realm of $45 to $50. But that's a far cry from, getting on Discogs and having to buy one or asking your record store to order it for you, and it's going to cost you $100. So their albums are worth having. Get them. Really good. Pape. Okay. Yeah. I hope everyone had a great week. Thanks again for coming around. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out my Sunday morning show that I do. It's called Sunday Morning Tinkle Tunes with Major. I talk about kind of electronic, ambient, soft spoken music, that type of stuff that would probably put a lot of you guys to sleep. So For any of you folks that like ambient music, that like electronica, that like guitar music, piano music, simple simple soft stuff, tune into that. I bring out some of my favorite selections from that. That's like I'd have to say that's probably like what 60 or 70% of my collection is everything in the way of ambient music. So instrumental and ambient music. That's primarily what I'm listening to these days. I really love it and enjoy it. So yeah, check out my Sunday morning show. I'm going to keep plugging along here with some of my favorite progressive jazz albums. Bringing out a really fun one here. I'm sure a lot of you folks have probably seen this group, and you probably continually just kind of like stepped over it, just kind of like, oh, that looks weird, whatever. I know I did. I did for years when I would just be like thumbing through bargain bins or thumbing through dollar records at the record store, the lower dusty shelf. That's where I've discovered these guys. Like nobody gives these guys the time of day. Until finally, I ended up getting one in a large collection I bought or something like that. And I was like, I want to check these guys out. And I plop them on the turntable and I put it on. And my jaw just dropped. I could not believe what I was hearing. These guys, they get totally, just like I said, totally stepped over. Anyone that is into insanely cool, unique, intricate, mathy, super cool, funky jazz, progressive jazz rock from the 70s. These guys were from Germany, and they're a band called Passport. This album called Cross Collateral, right? Is that what it's called? Yeah, Cross Collateral. They have a series of albums from the early and mid 70s. It all has very similar, really cool artwork. I really like the surreal, kind of goofy, abstract artwork, colorful and cool. And for some reason, when people see this, when I saw it for the first time, I kind of was just like, what is this ridiculous, goofy stuff? And you pass it over. But man, these guys are fucking legit, man. They can play. Holy shit. All of this stuff that's going on is really like keyboard heavy. I think they have two keyboards. Like one of their guys, he plays tenor sax, but really great, just kind of subtle, adds to the music a lot. It's not just a bunch of riffing, just constant blah, just tenor sax. You know how they get. It's not just a bunch of just blah all over the place. It's really like playing the melodic stuff, adding to the what's going on, and it just, man, this shit just rips. There's just tons of like Rhodes and Moog and just all kinds of really great keyboard work going on. The drummer's fucking sick. The guitar player's amazing. It's all instrumental, just smoking hot prog jazz. Really, really cool. Elements of not really much Latin going on. It's mostly just kind of like modern day, hard rock mixed with, fun, super funky, fucking white boy funk. Really cool. German white boy funk. Man, these guys can fucking rip. Really great. All you dudes and dudettes that have just kind of like passed over this all over these years. Like I said, they have at least 2 or 3 releases from the early to mid 70s. This one had to be 75 for this one. I've seen another one that has like similar artwork, I said, from 76. And they always have like this theme with like these like sunglasses and the eyes like kind of coming out of, another, you know what I mean? Pretty interesting, interdimensional progressive funk rock, jazz, neato shit. Yeah, the Germans, dude, they know what they're doing. Really cool shit. Everyone check out Passport. Definitely worth the $2 that you're gonna pay for it. No record store anywhere ever charges more than maybe for a near mint copy, maybe $4. I think I probably gave House of Records $4 for this because it's in mint condition. So yeah, definitely worth having. Check it out, everybody. Passport. Yeah. Here's another one that's kind of like a really odd, not odd, but obscure. Kind of came out of nowhere. I bought this because the art looked really cool, looked intriguing. This was actually in my at my record store in the ambient electronic section. They kind of have an all-encompassing area that's like, instrumental, ambient, electronic, avant. It's like four or five big bins and a big, rack in the store. And so there's a lot of great shit in there that's just kind of like, it encompasses a very wide array of things, if you know what I mean. That's kind of what I was getting at. But these guys, I'm not sure, I think it got plopped in there by accident. I picked it up because the artwork was gorgeous and it was affordable. It was under $20, and I trust those guys down there at my record store. I know that they're going to be selling some legitimately good stuff, and I was just really pleasantly surprised. Really cool, sludgy, atmospheric, dark, moody, very moody, much like that one group that I was just mentioning earlier, Big Lazy. Very similar to those guys. Very kind of like drudgy, dudes playing double bass, stand-up bass, real just soft, plunking piano. It's just brushes on the drums, just almost, sans any real tempo. It's almost beatless in a sense. You're just getting washy snare drum, washy cymbals, boom, 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 pulling on that double bass, just kind of like amorphous, chords on the piano, very just subtle and dark. This band is called The Still. The Still. I believe the album's just titled the same, eponymous. Interesting. I don't know where they're from. The record company, Series Aphonos. I don't know if they're from a different country. All of the dudes in the band, they all have very like westernized names. Chris Abrahams, Derek Shirley, Steve Heather. Very just kind of like garden variety American names. So, but I don't know, man. Never heard of these guys. Just like I said, just really fantastic, drudgy, atmospheric, really kind of drone type jazz stuff. I love the shit out of this type of stuff. Totally instrumental, yeah, really just kind of like a, hidden gem. Never seen this ever anywhere. I bought the LP, like I said, and I ended up selling the LP at a record show years ago because I knew it came with this CD, and so it's kind of a dick move, but kept the CD, knew I'd always have the music, sold the LP. I'm sure I'll probably buy the LP again someday if I ever come across it, but man, I don't think I'll ever come across it again. Pretty interesting, cool rarity. So, but yeah, everybody check this band out. They're just called The Still, and like I said, if you like that kind of really moody, atmospheric, kind of droney type of jazz, this is definitely for you. So, yeah, cool stuff. Very cool. Okay, getting down to the last few. Kind of a short episode tonight. Not that I don't, I'm enthused about this stuff, especially about this subgenre. I don't have a ton of jazz in my collection. Like I said, I'm not one of those like super collectors that just, totally praises the golden age, the golden era of vintage vinyl, because, that's what a lot of that is all about. I just didn't immediately jump on that train when I became a collector, but I can definitely respect and appreciate, and I do know, it makes sense to me why people really go for those classic jazz series, LPs and stuff. It's pretty cool stuff, the musicianship and the history, and I really dig it. I'm just more of kind of like a fusion, progressive, 70s, 80s, 90s type of guy. These guys, straight out of the late 70s, early 80s, man, these fucking dudes. So cool. One of my favorite drummers of all times, Rod Morgenstein. This band, the Dixie Dregs, we've all heard about the Dixie Dregs. Began as just the Dregs, right? They were kind of more of like, kind of a prog rock band in the mid 70s, I think, early to mid 70s. And then they took on someone, I can't remember his name, they took on a fiddle player and started calling themselves the Dixie Dregs because, you know, added the fiddle. But still just playing some just like insane, smoking, really complex, cool, rhythmic, you know, progressive jazz, prog jazz. It's just fusion craziness. Rod Morgenstein, one of my favorite drummers ever. He's notorious for, you know, he's played in other supergroups. He's been a writer and a player in that famous Burning for Buddy band, the Buddy Rich tribute band. Like, he was one of the mainstay guys for that. Did a ton of drumming in that band. Just fucking phenomenal drummer. Some of the other guys, I'm sure a lot of you heads will probably recognize a few of these names when you read them on here, but yeah, just emblematic jazz greats. Oh, Steve Morse. Yeah, Steve Morse on all the guitar stuff. I'm sure you guitar guys know who Steve Morse is. But yeah, what more to say about this one? Just like I said, not always super complex, but complex enough to really please, you know, you prog heads out there, but a lot of just kind of the standard, you know, goodies that jazz people will love. And just, it definitely reeks of like standard jazz, but there's just lots of cool moments of just funk and Latin, just fusion shit, just dripping with the fusion. I'm sure a lot of you folks are probably familiar with the track on here called Odyssey. If not, please immediately get on the interwebs and check out the track Odyssey by the Dixie Dregs. That shit will blow your mind. It's fantastic. Yeah. I can't believe what people listen to coming out of this same era, like, you know, mid to late 70s. You know, everyone would just prefer to listen to just, you know, Steely Dan and, you know, Chicago, and like, fuck, give me a break, dude. Why the fuck are you listening to that garbage when you could be listening to this shit? Whatever. Try not to be a hater, but talk about insano cool prog jazz. This is for you, definitely. Dixie Dregs. The album's called What If, right? Yeah, the album's called What If, 1978. Yeah, get it. All right, we're gonna come to a close here. Bring it to a close. I've brought this out before. Really, really, really amazing new artist. Definitely an album that should have been on my best top of last year. I just did not have enough of a chance to really sit and absorb this album enough. But in retrospect, yeah, this one, it should have at least, it would definitely still, like, it would be in like my top 15 of 2020. But I brought it up before when I was probably, what was I talking about? I was talking about, I did a show like months ago called like bands you've probably never heard of or whatever, you know, that kind of thing. This artist, oh my God, Mollestad Thomason is her name. She goes by the moniker Hedvig Mollestad. But I think her actual real name is just Mollestad Thomason. She is a Norwegian lady, and holy shit can she play a mean fucking guitar. Boy howdy, the guitar playing virtuoso nature of this gal. And all of the players on her album, this album is called Echidna, came out last year, 2020. Early on in the year, kind of just, you know, soaring under the radar, just like always, just on a really kind of, not obscure record label, but just a record label that's not well known in America. They're called Rune Gramophone, out of Scandinavian world. I'm not sure exactly where, but I'm pretty sure just out of Norway. But yeah, Rune Gramophone puts this artist out, as well as, you know, numerous other just insanely fucking awesome artists. But her trio, you know, and actually they've released other albums under the name the not Hedvig Mollestad, but Mollestad Thomason Trio. So I don't know. I don't know if they're the same players or not. I've never gone into a lot of detailed research about if the trio is different than this group of individuals. But I know that there's more than obviously more than 3 people playing on this album. But yeah, there's at least 4 or 5 players on this album, and just thick, rich, definitely jazz stylings. But those jazz stylings are paired with just awesome progressive, like hard rock. We're talking like you may as well be listening to like, you know, these guitar riffs are like fueled by, you know, like you're listening to like Steppenwolf, you know, or like hard 70s rock, like Deep Purple, sometimes moments of like really cool noodly progressive stuff that you would hear, you know, that's reminiscent of like, you know, the prog greats of the 70s, Steve Howe and Robert Fripp, those kind of really noodly, really intricate odd time signatures, and she'll be balancing that while there's all kinds of like really awesome horns going on in the background, like jazz horns, like, you know, subtle jazz stylings, and like there's, you know, moments of you know, really great like soft vibraphone. Like we're talking, it's a jazz album. It's like it sounds like a classic jazz album, like you're listening to Milt Jackson or fucking, you know what I mean, like Charlie Parker or something like that. There is lots of horn, and it just suddenly breaks into just like ripping fucking heavy metal style guitar, dark kind of sinister sounds out of this album. It's just, it's too good for words. I can't even describe it. Like moments where you feel like you're listening to like a dark metal album, and then suddenly you feel like I'm listening to a prog album now. Oh, now I'm just listening to just like a solid jazz standard. It's just, but it's all blended together so well. Like it's crafted so well that it's not jarring. It doesn't feel out of place. It doesn't feel like it's, you know what I mean? It gels. They figured it out. And it's not just on a production level. I think they just, more than just that, they tampered with their sound so much that they understand how to play together so well that they, you know, the balance between all the different, you know, variables and the genres and the styles and the dynamic levels, and just they really they bring it, that they equalize it so well. It's a little piece of genius. I really feel it is. One of the best albums to come out of the year last year. Just really super, super sick. So anyone that really loves heavy music, as far as like, it's not like crazy screaming your eyeballs out type metal, type hard rock. It's just, it's, you know, it's definitely got a super heavier edge. Heavier than just kind of like your standard like hard rock, you know. It feels like metal, and moments, you know, just kind of like infused with just fantastic fucking jazz work. Really incredible rhythms. Wow, odd time signatures, and they know how to play with that shit, because it's not, you know, really just apparent like, you know, a 9/8 bar, and like where the, you know, downbeats are really prominent and the accent patterns really prominent, so you know exactly where the 9 is, that kind of thing. You know, it's not like that. It's all really kind of like low-key subtle. Like you, a lot of times on some of these songs, you don't know where the fucking beat is. You know, you're just kind of like in a big swirling chaotic mess, and every now and again you're like, oh, there's the downbeat. All right, I'm back on the downbeat. And you're floating in the ether for a minute and a half until you can recognize where a downbeat might be again. Pretty fucking heady, pretty amazing. I'd have to say my favorite track, there's a song called A Stone's Throw. That one's wicked cool. The one right after that, Antilion, I believe is probably how you pronounce it. Antilion. Yeah, wow. Those 2 songs. Just those 2 songs, worth the album right there. But they're all fantastic. Yeah, I you know, very highly recommend this album to everybody that loves progressive rock, progressive jazz, jazz rock, heavy music. There's a little something for everybody in this album. Pretty smoking. Pretty cool. Yeah. We've been talking about progressive jazz. Those are a select few of my favorite progressive jazz albums from my collection. So if you all have anything to say about this, go right ahead and say it. I'd love to have a comment or two. Tell me what I missed. Tell me what I should buy. Yeah, this has been great. Thanks again for joining me. I hope you'll tune in on Sunday mornings for my Tinkle Tunes show. And tune in again next week for some more fun, some more music appreciation. And yeah, peace be with you.